people need to know that Juneteenth is not a black thing or a Texas thing. We all need to be about the business of freedom, because none of us are free till we're all free.
Welcome to the Living Undivided Juneteenth celebration. I'm Chuck Mingo, and I get to lead this incredible team of people who unite and ignite for racial justice. If you're not familiar with what we do, the core of what we do are 2 6-week transformative journeys, one called Living Undivided, one called Working Undivided, where people come together in a diverse group to have honest conversations about race with faith at the center. And from those conversations and experiences, people get ignited to pursue the work of justice. We don't want to just talk about justice. We want to, as it says in Micah 6:8, do justice. And we're here celebrating Juneteenth because it's also the birthday of our organization. And Juneteenth is everybody's holiday. It's a holiday rooted in the true essence of freedom. And we think there's also joy to be had in this work. Yes, it can be hard. Yes, the challenges are great, but there's joy to be had in this work. Joy that you're going to connect to through the stories of my friends. You're going to be meeting people that are on our staff team. You're going to be meeting our amazing alumni and other people, all who are pursuing the work of justice in unique ways. One of those stories is that of my friend Cameron Marshall. He's a filmmaker, and he's actually using that art medium to spark conversations about police and community relations, and he's doing it through the genre of comedy.
Hi, I'm Cam Marshall, and I'm a filmmaker. Yeah, I just finished writing, directing, producing my first feature film. It's called Freaky Profiling, and it's about a white police officer and a black activist get in a supernatural altercation and switch places. And so they have to work together to overcome their differences to switch back before it's too late. And it's really a story about empathy and how getting close to someone and learning what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes can really help you empathize with them. It's important. The story is important to me because, 2020, the height of, George Floyd and racial unrest in our country, I really felt like there are a lot of people screaming at each other, but there wasn't a lot of people listening to each other. And having gone through Undivided, I think that was a great model for me to see what it's like to share your experience with someone, not trying to attack them, but trying to help them understand where you come from. And so I really wanted to make a movie and a story that kind of challenged people to open their minds and their hearts to listening to someone before just judging and thinking they know how someone will respond. I think the biggest thing I learned through going through Undivided, myself being a black male and growing up with black parents, was I was kind of exhausted talking about race and just really kind of frustrated that some of my white brothers and sisters seemed to be just not able to have the conversation with me or just asking me a lot of questions, but I wasn't really listening to them. And as I started going through Undivided and hearing that, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And it's not that when someone asks you a question about race that they're, trying to start an argument. It's really like they're trying to learn and try to understand. And going through Undivided gave me more grace for my friends who are different than me and to help me be a safe place for them to kind of ask those questions. And so I took what I learned from that and tried to write a movie that I felt like didn't just preach at you, but kind of really gives you examples and situations for you to see how people interact with one another and let the audience decide of who do you feel like is in the right in this situation? How do you feel like you would have responded if you were this, character in this role and this was happening to you? I think the joy and the journey for me in making this movie is, making something that I can see people relate to. There's people on set when we be having different scenes and dialogue, and I can see their eyes light up of like, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. Or I think just creating something where I hope that people can watch and just be a little bit more open, like their heart could be open a little bit more. And it's something that I hope as a filmmaker, I've done a job of just presenting something to someone to make them think a little bit differently.
I love that story. And now you're going to hear from someone who inspires me as he talks about what got him into the work of racial healing and justice.
I would say that God's been working on me around race since I was quite young, and it could go back to my dad coaching an interracial basketball team when I was very small in Anderson, Indiana. So I just thought these 8th grade basketball players were the Michael Jordans or the LeBron James or the Larry Birds of our little town. They were heroes. So getting to hang out with them, having positive first experiences across race, I think set a trajectory for me. A lot of my early reading was either mystery books like The Hardy Boys or The Three Investigators or Encyclopedia Brown, which I never got right, or it was sports biographies. And a lot of the ones I was drawn to were like Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or Jesse Owens or Jim Brown, and they all had these stories of discrimination. And frankly, my first introduction to segregation and Jim Crow was not learning it in school. I don't know how much we talked about it in my largely white elementary school, was reading about it in these youth-oriented sports biographies. So that got me very interested in what was going on, why was it going on, and I was reading these in the 70s, and we're talking only 10 years or so removed. Of course, as a 8 or 9 or 10-year-old, that seemed like a century, but I was growing up just in the wake of the civil rights movement. Yeah, so I ended up going to seminary at Princeton in New Jersey. And my second semester of my first year, I took a class on the theology of James Cone. Dr. James Cone is one of the founders and pioneers of Black theology. And part of that class was every Friday we would watch a video series called Eyes on the Prize, which is an amazing documentary that was put together in the 1980s. And the very first week included in that first documentary the story of Emmett Till. And I remember that moment, hearing that story and looking at my hands and wishing they were a different color. It was the first time in my life that really the knowledge I had of racism and discrimination went from head knowledge to the heart and even the gut. I believe it was important for me to have my heart broken around race. And that put me on a path. I remember the Rodney King verdict happened. And Rodney King, who was pummeled over 50 times by Los Angeles police, unarmed, prone on the ground, batoned and kicked. The officers again were actually indicted, but again, there was a not guilty verdict. And South Central Los Angeles in late April, early May 1992 went up in flames. And there was something about that moment. There was the president of the seminary said, hey, let's have a conversation about our leadership as folks planning to minister and lead congregations in the 90s and beyond. Let's have a conversation about what we're learning, what this says to us in our vocation. And I decided to show up. And when I got there, there were about 40 Black students on campus. Almost all of them were in that chapel. There were about 150 Korean and Korean American students on campus. I'd say another 40 or 50 of those folks showed up, maybe a third. There were about 600 white students on campus, and if there were 12 of us, that's probably using pastor math to pad the numbers a little bit. There were very few white students in that room. And I don't remember a lot of what was said that evening, but I do feel like God said, if nothing else, you're called to show up. And really that set me on a path of concern and passion for racial justice, for organizing and working and building capacity and challenging others who are followers of Jesus to join this effort that has marked, we're about 30 years out from that right now. So that's been a big part of my journey over these last 3 decades.
Hi, I'm Chuck Mingo, pastor and leader of a nonprofit committed to racial healing, solidarity, and justice. And you're about to hear from my partner, my co-founder, Troy Jackson, who along with being a pastor for 22 years, also has a PhD in civil rights history. So when I tell you Troy is the history teacher you wished you had, you're about to find out why, as he gives us a deeper understanding on why we celebrate the holiday of Juneteenth.
As we come together to celebrate our newest national holiday, Juneteenth, one might ask, who freed the enslaved? Ask most in the United States, and a common answer would be President Abraham Lincoln, who on January 1, 1863, issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the enslaved in any state that had joined the Confederacy. Others might point to the U.S. Congress and the ratification of the 13th Amendment on December 6, 1865, which officially ended slavery as part of the U.S. Constitution, except as punishment for a crime. Another compelling answer is the slaves, in fact, freed themselves. Consider the Underground Railroad, where the enslaved risked all to escape bondage by making the dangerous journey north. Or during the Civil War, as multitudes simply walked off plantations and claimed their own freedom. The celebration of our newest national holiday, Juneteenth, offers a different perspective, illustrating that ending an onerous and vile institution like slavery happens in fits and starts, and never smoothly. On June 19, 1865, federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, declaring that the roughly 250,000 enslaved in the state are in fact free, an event that took over 2 months after the actual end of the Civil War. What is so compelling about Juneteenth, however, is that we remember it. We remember this day because the freed enslaved in Texas claimed this day. The very next year, on June 19, 1866, those who had been freed from bondage in Texas had their first Jubilee celebration, and they kept celebrating year after year. The U.S. may call July 4th Independence Day, and increasingly over the years, the Black community around the nation has embraced Juneteenth as a day of jubilee and freedom that included them right from the beginning and was about their humanity. I love this use of the word jubilee, which comes from the Mosaic Law. This was a time after every 49 years where there would be a leveling, where there would be a reinstitution of equity and equality and opportunity for every person. The world would be set to rights. By using the word jubilee, those who first celebrated Juneteenth were not only celebrating their freedom, they were also offering a compelling call for justice and equity and opportunity. In a nation where holidays and meaning and celebration often flow from decisions made by white men like me, Juneteenth represents a holiday defined and championed by Black men and women. Juneteenth became a holiday for all of us on June 17, 2021. So every June 19th, we have an opportunity to celebrate freedom and liberty and to call for the justice implied in that word, Jubilee.
They need to make themselves a committee of one. I advocate each one teach one. We know somebody who's not on the same page with us, and we can teach them. We are our brother's keeper.
A North Star is a guide that helps people set a directional course. Our North Star is to release the flow of racial healing and justice that repairs wounds and cultivates equitable systems where all people flourish. This North Star that guides our work is not just aspirational, but gives us a path and hope for where we are going. Our mission is to unite people in their communities and cities to start cultivating those equitable systems and help them take steps to activate that flow and to ignite them through our content and educational experiences. We also believe there's no singular way to engage in the work of racial healing, solidarity, and justice, and that we all have a part to play in this work. God calls us to uniquely and specifically use our gifts and talents to work towards creating more equitable outcomes through a diversity of ways. God led me personally into this work by providing a myriad of experiences where I was taught to honor differences, from the military town I grew up in to attending an HBCU. Through these experiences, I've learned that when those differences are not honored and elevated, they can cause hurt and trauma, and that'll be the outcome. I want to be a part of not only honoring others, but also being an example for others in how to honor. This is how I was led and how I stay encouraged through these inspirations that I find in myself and through other people. One such example of this inspiration is my friend, also named Brittany. She's my stylist. As I sit in her chair and get the blessing of her craft, I also get to hear the blessing of the work she's doing in our community, a true passion project. That is an effort to build equity at the intersection of race, gender, and economics.
You know, when I walk into the rooms or walking into the school, I'm called the pad lady. So the pad lady is here, and I hear that from the students, I hear that from the staff, and the smiles. You never would think a taboo subject as menstruation would come up to be a smiling, joyful task, but that is one less thing that they have to worry about. One less thing that they can come to school with off their mind so they can prepare themselves for their education or for their sports or their day-to-day living. To see a smile on their faces captures everything that I live for. My name is Brittany Gray. I am the founder of Girls Health Period, a nonprofit providing menstrual products, underwear, sports bras to make sure our students are provided a well-rounded life and being clean, comfortable, and confident in their menstrual cycle. Well, I used to be an intervention specialist, which I enjoyed for many years. And then as I'm transferred to a hairstylist full-time, that's when I wanted to come back into the education system and still see the students' faces, because that really provided me with a lot of joy. And one thing that was really big was hygiene closets. And so the first thing all the time that was always missing, or not missing, or just always to go quickly, is menstrual products. So I was like, hey, I'm starting a Cash App. I need all my people from Facebook and Instagram to throw me some money so I can make sure these kids have menstrual products. 6 months later, became a 501c3. From 1 school to 9 schools, and now we're in 67 schools here locally in Cincinnati, and then 100 nationwide. With Girls Health Period, we were entering into the schools, and what we found out is that at least 1 out of 5 menstruators are missing school because of their menstrual cycle. But here in the Cincinnati area, it's about 3 out of 5 menstruators that are missing school. So that's a lack of education for those days. And it's not just one day, it's usually between 3 to 5 days. And if you're already a C student that's already looking at a failing grade, we can't have that. So that's something that we made sure that we start with a pad, but then it's the education behind it, because there's a lot of things that our students use that are not appropriate for menstrual hygiene in general, that actually can definitely hurt them in the future. I am born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. So to be in the backyard of this great city, this queen city, and know that I'm providing for these students to make sure this is one less thing that they have to worry about, it gives me goosebumps. I have goosebumps and chills currently, because this is something I love. Their families are in love with this. We have a inaugural event of GHP Period Summit coming up, and this is something that's much more that I believe any family needed to have in their life, and they didn't even know it. So to see the joy that a conversation that used to be shunned away to a point where now we can talk about it just like in this moment and have smiles about it, that's what leads me to this point.
Juneteenth is a joyous holiday of jubilee, and it also embodies the delay of racial justice in our country. It's important to recognize that even while we celebrate the repentant act of abolishing slavery, the ongoing work of creating equitable systems where all people flourish is arduous. The tentacles of the sin of racism continue to reach, grip, and tear at the fabric of our nation. The pain is real. And it can be so easy to see and feel the pain, the real pain around us, and sit in a place of defeat and despair. I'm actually not here to tell you not to do that. When we are deeply hurting, it would be dishonoring to move too quickly from that point of pain. We deeply hurt when we have been deeply moved and when we have deeply loved. And we need to hold space for that. And when we are able to take a deeper breath, my encouragement to you, to us, is to hold space for you to let a little bit of that light into the heavy places. This is not in an attempt to silence the tears or cover up the scars. It is to offer a space for the smile to emerge as fond memories pop into your mind. It is to give permission for laughter to well up inside and be released from the same body holding your tears. It is the honoring of moments of peace that truly do pass all understanding, and the celebration of beautiful experiences that make us beam with pride. This is joy in motion, being used as a weapon, not to remove pain, but to reveal the strength that comes from moving through it and in it, from choosing to honor and hold space for, but not be overcome by. It is the telling of whole, full stories that have elements of heartbreak and elements of triumph. And though we may not always feel wholly free from the pain or from the perceptions and perspectives of others, when we think of where and who we came from, we use that sense of pride as a weapon of joy, reminding ourselves that we are beautiful, we are worthy, we are whole. As we continue on in this work and living in this skin we're in, there will be hard days, and there will also be good days. My hope is that moments of celebration will serve as personal declarations, boldly proclaiming that your life was not just built to sustain and survive storms, but reminding you that you were created and formed to bring light, to be light, and to receive light. Sharpen your weapon of joy through gatherings, sharing of stories, building new traditions, laughing, loving, and resting well. This weapon of joy is yours, not just to hold, but to use. And I hope that you give yourself space to use it often. We're going to hear a story of someone who truly understands how to use joy as a weapon when times are hard, when times are tough, and being able to elevate the beauty in the midst of the pain.
My name is R.H. SWEETEN. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, Walnut Hills, and I'm one of the founders of the Green Man Twist. Well, Green Man Twist was a platform that I dreamed up to kind of fix a broken neighborhood. It was a place where you get good soft serve ice cream, hot dogs, and nice, beautiful, clean music. A place where people commune together. That was the Green Man Twist. Here's what's going on. At Walnut Hills, you have on one side people who feel that they're helping you, making a bad community great. On the other side, you got people that's angry. They feel that it's a hostile takeover. So there's a war brewing. I came up with the Green Man Twist because it was a way of bringing these people together and bridging the gap. And it was kind of fun too. It was a beautiful thing. My mission is to bring people together. It's a mission from God, for real. Because God put it on my heart to do this, to keep my neighborhood a village. And instead of fighting with people or having people argue with each other, make it peaceful and bridge the gap. But the joy I found is that people do listen. People do try to come together. I found a lot of joy. I got neighbors now that know me by name, that waves at me when I come outside. They know my name and we talk, and they invite me over to their home. It's the whole joy of seeing people that wants to be in peace with each other.
There's something very beautiful when we stop and pause and listen and really hear what it is that we are called to do with the things that have been happening in our lives, whether it's shame or pain or hurt. What we're able to use as a gift from those dark moments can actually be blessings for us and for others. We're going to hear from someone, and that's part of their story.
My name is Andrea, and I got to work on a project called Shooting Doves. It revolves largely around music, which I also got to help create. Shooting Doves is a feature-length film about racial reconciliation. It is two musicians who find common ground in songwriting, and because of that, develop a relationship and have to engage in uncomfortable conversations, get insight into each other's lives and experiences, and because of that, become a more unified community. And we use music to create a sense of safety and universal language within that. And our hope is that people who watch it have a better understanding of how to engage in the racial reconciliation conversation. I had a friend who came to me about the film project, and originally I was just gonna be consulting on singing, vocal coaching, that kind of thing. But then it led to much more. I ended up being much more involved than I expected. And so really for me, it was just a matter of opting in or saying yes. Just accepting the invitation into the project. In working on this film, I wanted to be changed for the better. That's usually what I hope for in any experience I have. I was just lucky to be involved in this because the change for the better was specifically around the race conversation. And I learned how to move past my feelings of shame about being the bad guy or being perceived as the bad guy, or being transparent about my feelings of guilt, and just opting into the conversation, opting into the relationships, opting into making a difference despite how fumbly I might be about it and awkward I might be about it, that I can bring myself as I am to the table. And that's okay. That I don't have to have it all figured out to make a difference and to help my friends of color feel seen or for their stories to be told. I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to be the good guy. I just have to say yes. And that brought me a lot of freedom. And honestly, the joy absolutely comes in the depth of relationship. I felt that the real prize and the real treasure from working on the project would be the way that I was changed and the way that I got to more authentically connect with people who look different and have different experiences than me, and hopefully push past my discomfort and not only be seen, but see others more authentically. And that, more than anything, is of value to me.
Juneteenth is a reminder to me that despite the challenges, there is always a reason for joy. And I hope that as you heard these stories today, it was an opportunity for you to get connected to that joy. And you know what the source of joy is? When it comes to something as intractable, as long-standing of an issue as racism in our country, there's gotta be a source of hope that's greater than the source of struggle. And I believe that's what God is. That's what Jesus is. Jesus is the source of the hope in this work. So I pray for you that you would be inspired, that not just on Juneteenth, but every day you would be inspired to lead and live a life that is truly undivided. We're so glad you're with us. And now we just want to have an opportunity to respond to the God who gives hope.
darkest. Your light is greater. You light our way, God, you light our way. When evil is rising, you're rising higher with power to save, with power to save. And you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Death had a stronghold, but your light was stronger. Rose from the grave, rose up from the grave. Yeah, yeah. When evil is rising, you're rising higher with power to save, power to save. Whoa, whoa. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. There's hope, there's hope in the morning, hope in the evening, hope because you're living, hope because you're breathing. There's hope in the breaking, hope in the sorrow, hope for this moment, my hope for tomorrow. There's hope in the morning, there's hope in the evening, there's hope because you're living, there's hope because you're breathing, there's hope in the breaking, there's hope in the sorrow, there's hope for this moment, my hope for tomorrow. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive.
However you're celebrating Juneteenth, we're glad you shared some of your holiday with us. We invite you to stay in the work with us. Get involved by hosting a cohort in your community.
Since 2015, we've been bringing people together across racial differences for our transformational cohort experiences. All across the country, thousands of people are sharing in facilitated programs designed to unite and ignite people into the work of fulfilling God's heart for justice.
We want to come alongside you in your community to equip and empower you as you catalyze people into the work of racial healing, solidarity, and justice.
So reach out. We would love to hear from you because our work isn't done until we are all living undivided.